Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. A couple of weeks ago, Representative Steve King of Iowa took to Twitter to proudly proclaim his grotesque racism by jumping on the white genocide train in a tweet that read, "We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies." When asked to clarify by a CNN talking head, King responded, "I meant exactly what I said." Well, good. That's nice and clear then. To break that down real fast, this racist pile of fear, loathing, and psychosis is advocating for what Richard Spencer calls peaceful ethnic cleansing. The removal of anyone who doesn't look like Taylor Swift from the American gene pool, and thereby the restoration of a civilization that currently controls more power and wealth than any other group, and has done so for hundreds of years through a grotesque and violent crusade of oppression and extraction, pushing other groups of people and animals to the brink of, if not into, extinction. This civilization has murdered somebody else's babies for centuries, for no other reason than greed and white nationalistic narcissism. Meanwhile, the triumphs and accolades that this civilization can boast about have been won in no small part due to the work of somebody else's babies, either via forced work or work done against the odds set against them by this very civilization. Truly, the only thing one could hope to restore for this Western civilization, if indeed it ever had any, is some fucking dignity and respect for people and planet. In lieu of polishing that turd, however, the only recourse is to fight and build, as the thinly veiled, rotting carcass of colonial capitalism, racist corporatism, and sexist commodification fractures and quakes, ignominiously breaking apart in a devilish swan song hell-bent on taking us all down with it. Comments like Steve King's are nothing new. Nor is the call for freedom, justice, peace, education, healthcare, the peace, land, and bread that Lenin shouted from the barricades, that Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale echoed in their 10-point platform for the Black Panther Party. This face-off between the forces of oppression and the oppressed, evil and good, oligarch and citizen, we have been here before. And who knows, we may be here again after the fall, but much of that depends on what we do right now. In the ashes of the old, so often we end up building a structure in the image of what was just destroyed. Our human need for something comfortable, something familiar, drives us to emulate the oppressive hierarchies, drives us to get stuck, wheels spinning in the potholes of history. We have to do better. We have to get uncomfortable in order to change. We must change and become ungovernable, for it is only by being ungovernable that we can effectively fight and build. It is only by releasing our ideological holds and, as Patoka put it, embracing the solidarity of the shaken, only by recognizing our shared instability, our shared oppression, can we actually be effective in creating something that works for all of us and the bits of planet that we have yet to fuck up beyond repair. We must be unapologetically uninformed and ready to use that information against the forces of oppression. We must turn the tools of oppression on itself, laying claim to these brains that they tried to whitewash, standing strong with these bodies that they tried to break or cage or otherwise whittle away through decades of work and a sick care system fed by our pain. We have to think and act. We have to fight and build. We, in the solidarity of the shaken, side by side on the front lines. As I mentioned briefly, the Black Panther Party utilized ideas from Lenin's call for peace, land, and bread in their 10-point party platform, written by founders Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. In fact, both Newton and Seale spent considerable time and energy diving into the revolutions of the past, dissecting the movements and actions of the oppressed, picking apart and analyzing so as to be most effective in their fight for justice. Ultimately, however, as Newton writes in his autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide, quote, "Our unique situation required a unique program. Although the relationship between the oppressor and the oppressed is universal, forms of oppression vary." The party platform and the Black Panther Party itself went on to become a powerhouse of resolute activism and pointed fight and build efforts that directly engaged their communities and inspired people across the globe. The details of the rise and fall of the Black Panther Party and its leaders are something that everyone should research, but, if nothing else, their approach of direct community activism and intellectual constructive resistance is something that we must consider as we work in our own communities today. Just as Newton wrote, we cannot directly apply the experiences of past revolutionaries to our current fight, but we can, and indeed we should, use their stories as tools with which to build. In that same vein, a few weeks ago, former Black Panther and forever activist Kiilu Nyasha joined us to discuss the legacy of anti-racist, anti-fascist activism, the current climate, and the road ahead. Take a look. The election of Donald Trump, is that as terrifying as it sounds to some people, or is it just a more overt representation of what's already been there, the racism, the sexism, the bigotry that this country has embodied for a long time?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, we have, 400 years of history of gross racism in this country, beginning with chattel slavery. And when chattel slavery ended, racism did not end. In fact, it worsened in many respects because we didn't have any protections. The Reconstruction period was terrible. We've been subjected to Jim Crow, to gross discrimination, to racism in every aspect of our lives. And so Trump is just, and the 8 years of Obama so pacified Black people and white liberals that we laid down and let him do all the dirt that he did. So Obama paved the way for Trump. And the other thing that paved the way for Trump was the fact that we, and when I say we, the American people, have been going for this reactionary duopoly for good, how long? I mean, hundreds of years now. And the Democrats and the Republicans, they are nothing but a one-party state with a right wing and a left wing. And actually, I think it's the right and the far right.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so.
And in that same vein, you talking about Obama sort of pacifying white liberals and Black communities as well. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, the sort of use of Black bodies in our culture, whether that be what Cornel West called Obama the sort of Black poster child for Wall Street, or on the flip side, you have this perpetuating stereotype of Black men and women inside these very strict confines of what that means to be a Black man or a Black woman. Talk about the continuous use of Black bodies in the American cultural paradigm.
Well, they've been using Black people as front men to do their dirt for them for a long, long time. And of course, I mean, you just take a look at Ben Carson right now. What is he but a token Negro for Trump to display, to somehow suggest to people that he's not racist, which is silly. But Obama was groomed for the presidency, and I think they were very clever. He was always relatively conservative. In fact, when he made his big speech about racism, I remember distinctly his saying some of the things that came out of his grandmother, who was mostly raised in his grandmother's mouth, made him cringe. Okay, so he grew up knowing well white supremacist racism. And I think he's a white supremacist himself. Black people, a lot of people don't think Black people can be white supremacists. But if you think that white people are superior and that somehow or another you're the exceptional Negro, then you are a white supremacist, okay? So we have to be clear on that. And one of this that I couldn't argue, I had so much trouble with white liberals because they take the idea that just because somebody's Black, somehow or another they're going to be better. Well, that's silly too. So I think that we all have to deal with racism. And with the Trump administration, I think it's great that he's as blatant as he is. I think it's great that they've got all these arch racists, these no ifs, ands, or buts about it racists in the White House, because now, I mean, look what's going on. People are waking up. People are learning all about government. They're giving civics lessons every day. I mean, they're organizing, they're protesting, and I think it's wonderful.
So in that same vein, I remember that you wrote on your blog about the election and how you don't think that voting is the right path forward, and that sort of speaks to your comment about it's not really the right wing and the left wing; it's the right wing and the further right wing.
Yeah.
What do you say to people who want to get engaged and have always thought that voting would fix things? What are the next steps? And in that same vein, your experience in the Black Panther movement and the movement for equality, this idea of not just fighting something but building an alternative at the same time.
Exactly. Well, I just have to go back to the Black Panther Party. We were a revolutionary political party. Our ideology was Marxist, Leninist, Maoist. Okay. Now, I think that over time we would have maybe adjusted some of those ideological premises because of changing conditions. And I think some of our tactics and strategies would have to be changed. The bottom line is I don't recommend going up against this government militarily. However, we have power because they're a fraction. The ruling class in this country now is a fraction of 1%. We've got 8 people who own half the world's wealth. 8. Okay, so the wealth is concentrated in a tiny percentage of the global population, a tiny percentage of the American population, and we are the 99%, for goodness sakes. What do we have to do? We have to unite. How can we unite if we can't get along with each other? If we judge every person by the color of his or her skin, we cannot. We have to unite to move on this government. And no, I don't believe in voting, because what are you voting for? I think that's why we have this horrific government in place now, is because we've been voting for the lesser of two evils for hundreds of years. And what are we voting for? We're voting for evil. How can it be lesser? It's evil.
And in that same vein, your thoughts, because I know that there's always the discussion of this diversity of tactics, and of course the Black Panthers had a diversity of tactics as well. What are your thoughts on like what tactics should we be using? Are there certain ones that we should be focusing more on, like the march versus the blockade, nonviolence versus destructive tactics, and also a little bit more about the self-defense against an increasingly violent system?
Good questions all. And I did want to backpedal a little. I don't think I answered your earlier question too well about, I think we need a revolutionary party. The Black Panther Party was a revolutionary party, but it was limited to Black. We need an international revolutionary party, okay? And that will fight for the socialist revolution that Bernie Sanders alluded to in his campaign, but didn't stick with it. So we really do need a revolutionary political party that advocates for a redistribution of the wealth and advocates for all the things that we demanded in our 10-point platform and program, decent housing, fit for the shelter of human beings, okay? The housing crisis is horrible right now. And we need healthy food. We need childcare, on-site childcare, free education all the way through the university. There's no reason we can't have those things if the wealth of this country is distributed appropriately. First, we can vote with our dollars, and I've been doing that for years. There's so many department stores and companies and corporations I won't do any business with, even though I don't have diddly squat. That's on principle. So if we all became principled in what we do with our money, okay, that's number one. And I've noticed that a lot of people are already doing that. Okay, and that's a good thing. Then the second thing is that it's in keeping with that, which is boycott. We have the power of boycott. We should boycott, divest in terms of the Palestinian situation. We should not be supporting Zionist Israel's repression and occupation of Palestine. So that's one of the things that we can do. The other things that we can do besides protest and all, speak out. Stop being liberal. When I mean liberal, just being quiet and silent and letting things slide for the sake of peace and free friendship. No, speak up. When you hear wrong ideas, speak up. If you're at a party, a dinner party, at work, anybody, people start talking politics, speak up. Don't allow reactionary untruths go down without you're saying something. Your silence is approval. Okay? So that's what I think. And every strategy that you can think of, and young people are the ones who are going to come up with some creative stuff. We oldies, we're not as creative and as bold and as audacious as the youth are. So it's really, we can give you some guidance. We can help you not fall in the pits that we fell into, or fall in the pit and the gain of the wit. So listen to your elders, because we've accumulated a little wisdom behind all the mistakes that we made. And we can help you avoid those same mistakes, those same pitfalls. However, we depend on you for the creative movement that is absolutely necessary today. And we know that you can come up with some creative ideas. And tech savvy people can do all kinds of things on the internet. And, and me, I'm just going to keep on educating to liberate till I die. I'm just going to keep studying and learning and trying to grow and trying to be less racist and less selfish and more considerate and more sharing and giving and kinder and all that, but very militant in striving to end fascism and institute a people's government.